Hello, everyone. Tonight, we are dragging our tired feet through the dust-caked stones of an ancient Roman street. The sun is low, casting long, golden streaks across the tiled rooftops, and the air smells faintly of bread sweat and something herbal, probably lavender. Ahead of us looms the gateway to the Roman bath complex, arches wide and welcoming, already murmuring with the sounds of splashing water and idle gossip. You can hear the slap of sandals on marble, the hiss of steam escaping vents beneath the floor, and a half-hearted argument about fish sauce echoing from a courtyard. You're carrying a little wooden bucket, or a woven satchel maybe slung over your shoulder, and you're dressed in a tunic, just fancy enough to suggest you aren't poor, but simple enough to say you aren't trying too hard. You haven't bathed in 3 days, which is totally normal, and you're sweating through your back. But it's fine. Everyone else is too. You're not here to impress yet. The baths will take care of that. This is the heart of Roman social life. Not the forums, not the temples. The baths. And yes, we are technically going to strip down, scrape off grime with curved metal tools and gossip while sweating profusely next to strangers. You probably won't survive this, but it's all part of the experience. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you really like what I'm doing here. And hey, let me know where you're watching from and what time it is for you. I love seeing how far and wide this sleepy little history tour travels. Now, turn off the lights, maybe turn on the fan for some soothing noise, and let's get down to business tonight. We push through the entrance, and the light changes immediately. It gets dimmer, filtered through stone and smoke. A vendor near the door offers us a bundle of mint leaves tied with string for chewing or sniffing, depending on how you're feeling. Others are hawking cheap combs, hairpins, and bits of soapstone carved into lucky charms. You'd think a public bath would smell awful, but the Romans were surprisingly obsessed with scent. The air is heavy with steam, infused with herbs, rosemary, thyme, bay leaf. Somewhere in the back of your throat is a hint of something acidic, maybe vinegar, maybe boiled wine. It's cleansing in its own weird way. The floor beneath our feet is warm, not just sun warm, but heated from below. We're walking on hypocaust tiles, hollow bricks channeling hot air from furnaces stoked deep in the belly of the building. Every step is a little reminder that we're not just here to splash around. This whole operation is intentional engineered and, to be honest, brilliant. We walk past a crowd of men lounging on benches near the entrance. Some are oiled and glistening already, clearly here early. Others are unwrapping towels or sipping wine from ceramic cups. And there's always that one guy loudly explaining politics to a half-listening crowd. Every bath has one. One thing you'll notice quickly, people here are very relaxed. Privacy is not really a thing. Nudity, casual conversation, and shoulder-to-shoulder sweating are all completely normal. If you're shy, well, too bad. You'll get over it. There are little side rooms along the corridor, places to stash your clothes and bags, or to pay a servant to watch them for you. Trusting your stuff to a complete stranger might seem risky, but Romans had a whole economy based on that. Just don't tip too little or leave your sandals. They're weirdly expensive. Past the changing rooms is the apoditerium, basically a cloakroom and gossip hub. People pause here to chat, stretch, and maybe eye each other up a little. You can already tell who's here to relax and who's here to climb the social ladder. Or the romantic one. Now, the design of the place is smart. You move from warm to hot to boiling, then back again. It's a whole circulation plan. The walls are thick, insulating the heat and muffling the voices, so even when it's crowded, it feels sort of soft. dreamlike, like floating through a very steamy cloud of cologne and ego. We step toward the Palaestra, the open courtyard where the pre-bath rituals happen. There's exercise going on. Some guys practicing wrestling holds others swinging weights made of lead, and a few trying to throw discus without hitting a goose that's wandered in. Nobody seems too worried. It's loud here, but not angry loud. More like the hum of many lives intersecting. And beneath it all, there's the comforting hiss of heat moving through the building like the world itself is exhaling. We'll start by walking a slow loop around the space. No rush. The warmth from the floor is creeping up into your legs. You're already beginning to feel a little looser, a little heavier in your limbs, like the weight of the week is starting to melt away. Honestly, it's a lot, but it's also kind of perfect. And now that we've made our entrance and adjusted to the bathhouse rhythm, let's take a look at what we brought with us and what we probably forgot. I set down my satchel on a wooden bench and untie the cord. It's nothing fancy, woven straw with a leather strap, but it's mine, and it's stuffed with all the things one might need for a proper Roman bath experience, or at least the things I remembered to bring, which frankly is only most of them. First out of the bag is the oil flask. You'd think it would be soap, right? Nope. Romans weren't really into suds. Instead, they rubbed themselves down with olive oil, sometimes scented with herbs or flowers, sometimes just plain. It's not just about getting clean. It softens the skin, loosens dirt, and prepares the body for the scraping that comes later. We'll get there. Next is the strigil, a curved bronze tool that looks a little like a shoehorn and a little like something you'd find in a medieval surgery kit. It's used to scrape the oil sweat and dirt off your body in long strokes. Sounds pleasant, right? Actually, it kind of is, like being exfoliated by a blunt butter knife. Trust me, after sweating in the caldarium for 20 minutes, it feels amazing. Then there's the sponge. Yes, that sponge. Roman bathers brought their own personal cleaning sponges, usually on sticks. They had let's call it a dual purpose. Yes, you cleaned yourself with them, but you also used them after using the public toilets, which, to be clear, were stone benches with keyhole-shaped cutouts lined up side by side. No privacy, no shame. One communal gutter of running water underneath, and sponges rinsed between uses. Historians still debate whether people carried multiple sponges or just lived dangerously. I also packed sandals, the cheap cork-bottom kind you could kick off easily. The floors in the bathhouse were sometimes hot, always slippery, and occasionally sprinkled with tiny stones to improve traction. Going barefoot was asking for burns blisters, or the ancient Roman equivalent of athlete's foot. Oh, and a small hand towel. Linen, maybe? Roman bathers didn't usually dry off completely. Humidity hung in the air, but you'd want to wipe the oil and water out of your eyes. Plus, it was a social cue. If someone handed you a towel, it often meant they wanted to talk, or flirt, or challenge you to a debate about tax law. You never really knew. At the bottom of my bag is a little amphora of scented water. Lavenders, maybe, or rose petals. Sometimes people dabbed it behind their ears, sometimes on the wrists. It wasn't strong, just enough to mask the fact that you'd be sweating profusely in front of your peers. Romans were funny that way. Bathing in public was fine. Smelling bad. Unforgivable. There's a tiny bronze mirror, too slightly warped, and a bone comb. These were vanity essentials, even for the humble citizen. You didn't come to the baths just to clean up. You came to be seen. You came to look your best while half naked under flickering torchlight. Think gym locker room meets spa, meets low-key gladiator audition. And finally, I've got a few coins tucked into a waxed cloth pouch, just enough for a snack later, or to tip the bath attendants Kepsariai, who managed the changing rooms and sometimes held onto valuables. You wanted to keep them happy. They were known to misplace things if you were stingy, like your shoes or your dignity. But let's talk for a second about what I forgot, because there's always something. I forgot a backup tunic. Rookie mistake. After the baths, your clothes clung to you like seaweed. If you didn't bring a dry one, you'd end up squishing your way home dripping oil and shame down the cobblestones. I also didn't bring any dice. Some people like to play games while resting between rooms. Little boards etched into marble benches with tiny counters and lots of boasting. Losing wasn't just losing, it was losing with an audience. And let's be honest, nobody ever played fair. That guy over by the incense brazier has 4 sixes in his hand and a smug grin. I'm not getting into it today. What's that? You're wondering if any of this ever got stolen. Oh, absolutely. Bathhouse theft was so common, it became a literary cliché. Poets joked about thieves with hands so fast they could steal your sandals while you were still wearing them. Wealthier bathers often brought a slave just to watch their stuff. The rest of us hoped for the best and rolled the dice, just not literally, since again, I forgot mine. And here's the odd part. Despite all this preparation, most Romans were completely unbothered by the risk. It was part of the ritual. You showed up. You trusted strangers. You left a little lighter, either cleaner, poorer, or both. So now, satchel unpacked sponge in hand, and sandals tightly fastened, I make my way toward the Palaestra. That's where the real prep begins, because before we dip into warm water or slide into the steam room, we've got to sweat and groan and get dusty again. Because what fun is getting clean if you didn't earn it with a little suffering first? The Palaestra is wide open, sunlit, and humming with energy. It's the Roman equivalent of a gym, minus the Bluetooth earbuds and protein shakes. There are no mirrors here, just polished stone scattered sand, and the sound of grunting clapping and occasional laughter. This is where you come to sweat it out before earning your trip into the baths themselves. I step into the courtyard and stretch a little arms above my head, spine cracking like old papyrus. Around me, other bathers are already at it. A group of young men are throwing medicine balls, big leather things stuffed with grain back and forth while trying not to fall on the slippery stones. An older man is jogging in place in his tunic, huffing dramatically and checking over his shoulder like someone's chasing him. Spoiler alert, no one is. No one. Over in one corner, 2 wrestlers are locked in a slow-motion embrace, muscles slick with oil, both grinning through gritted teeth. One of them slips and hits the sand with a theatrical grunt. There's applause. I clap politely. It's unclear if this was a serious match or just an extended flirtation, which in Roman times could be both. And let me tell you, nobody's using a towel here. You sweat and it runs. Down your back, your arms, your legs. The Romans believed in opening the pores before bathing. If your body didn't feel like a poorly stored wineskin, were you even doing it right? There's a young boy off to the side, probably a servant, or Pure, bouncing on his toes as he rubs down a patron's back with oil, prepping him for a wrestling match. Oil was like sunscreen gym chalk and post-workout balm rolled into one. It made you shine, gave you grip, and made sure you didn't leave too much of yourself stuck to the marble when you slipped. I walk to an open spot and grab a couple of lead weights halteres from the training bench. They're weirdly shaped, sort of like flattened bananas with handles. I swing them forward in a wide arc, lifting them over my head in sets of 3. That's about all I'm good for. A small audience watches without comment. One guy yawns. You know what's surprisingly common here? Shadowboxing. Romans didn't call it that, but they love to pretend. Fight with themselves in the sun, arms flailing, legs kicking out, sometimes even talking to their imaginary opponent. It's part exercise, part theater, and part stress relief. You didn't know whether to be impressed or worried, especially if they were arguing with someone named Gaius who wasn't actually there. One guy nearby is practicing discus throws in the sand court. He winds up like an angry flamingo and lets it fly. The discus lands with a heavy thunk about 10 feet short of where he clearly wanted it. No one says a word. The silence is supportive, which is probably why this place worked. You could be terrible at everything and still feel like you belonged. At the far wall, there's a strip of polished stone used for foot races. A few teens line up laughing, then sprint the length, barefoot arms pumping tunics flying behind them. No medals, no trophies, just the thrill of being slightly faster than your friend for 2 seconds. That and a strong chance of slipping and bruising something delicate. Historians still debate whether the Palaestra was mandatory. Some argue that exercise was expected before bathing, a social norm that separated the serious bathers from the slackers. Others think it was more optional, a showy prelude for those who liked the attention. Either way, most bathers did at least a few laps or lifts before heading into the steamy side of things. And then there were those who just stood around talking. This is where Roman politics and bathhouses got tangled up. The Palaestra was a prime place to network, share rumors, and drop subtle insults about your rival's pecs. Deals were made here, marriages arranged, laws debated. Sometimes people showed up just to listen, leaning against a column while soaking in gossip, like it was bathwater. My favorite character here today is a man with the most elaborate mustache I've ever seen. It curls like a pastry. He's instructing a group of kids how to leap over a low bench without falling on their faces. It's going well. For the bench anyway. But don't let the playful energy fool you. The Palaestra could be brutal. Fights broke out. Accidents happen. There's a dent in one of the marble pillars, and everyone says it's from a headbutt during an argument over goat cheese. I don't ask questions. The guy who delivered it might still be here. Probably shadowboxing. After about 20 minutes of half-hearted lunges, one pitiful jump, and a brief argument with a wasp that's decided I smell delicious, I decide I've done enough. My arms are sore, my sandals are slippery, and I've already been lightly judged by 3 grandfathers and a parrot. Time to head inside. I make my way back toward the shaded entry that leads deeper into the bathhouse, already feeling the transition. The air cools slightly. The light dims, and the scent changes from sun-warmed sweat and dusty stone to warm oil and bubbling heat. The Palaestra is behind me now, but its energy lingers. My body feels loose, humming with effort, and ready for what comes next. Which, frankly, is one of the weirdest bathing routines in ancient history. Because up next is olive oil, lots of it, and scraping, so much scraping. The moment I step into the unctorium, the oiling room, I'm hit with a smell that's hard to describe. It's warm, earthy, slightly floral, and a little sweaty. Like if a tree fell into a bottle of perfume and someone stirred it with gym socks. But it's not unpleasant. It's familiar, comforting even. I walk over to one of the attendants, a wiry man in a short tunic, with hands that look like they've never let go of a strigil. He doesn't speak, just nods, dips a ladle into a small clay basin of golden oil, and starts slathering it onto my shoulders like he's painting a house. The oil is warm, not scalding, but definitely heated. It spreads across my skin like honey, thick and deliberate. First the arms, then the chest, then the back. It's not sensual exactly, it's clinical, like he's prepping me for surgery or maybe barbecue. I'm handed my own strigil, though he has one too, and together we begin the next phase scraping. It starts slow. He drags the curved bronze blade across my skin in long practiced strokes, gathering up the oil, the sweat, and everything I've accumulated since last Tuesday. Dirt dust, dead skin cells, maybe some regrets. I scrape down my forearms, then across my belly, and finally down the legs. The blade leaves little trails of gunk in its wake, which the attendant wipes away with a square of wool. Efficient. Here's the thing. It feels really good. Not sharp, not rough. Just this firm gliding pressure that peels away the top layer of your week. It's the closest you get to molting without being a snake. You finish the session glistening cleaner than soap could ever get you, and about 6 ounces lighter. If you've never exfoliated in front of strangers while chatting about grain prices, you haven't lived. Of course, not everyone scraped themselves. Wealthier patrons had slaves or attendants do the job. Some even brought depilators, yes, hair removers. There were special tools and pastes to remove body hair, which some Romans believed was more hygienic, more attractive, or just less itchy under a toga. Historians still debate whether this was common practice or just another way for elite Romans to feel fancy. There's a guy nearby, probably upper middle class, being attended by 2 young boys who alternate between oiling his arms and debating which gladiator has the best legs. The man grunts approval occasionally, but mostly just watches the steam rising from the next room. He's waiting. We all are. One man, a few feet away, is grumbling loudly. Apparently, his oil had been cut with something cheap, maybe fish oil, maybe just bad olive oil. He sniffs himself repeatedly and scowls. I make a note not to bathe near him if he starts to smell like anchovies. And of course, there's a philosopher in the corner. There's always a philosopher. He's being scraped while quoting Seneca, gesturing with one oily hand, as if debating fate with the marble wall. His strigil glints in the torchlight, and no one is sure if he's brilliant or just very tired. Possibly both. The oiling room is loud, but not chaotic. Voices rise and fall. People tell stories, offer opinions, laugh at dirty jokes. One man is reenacting a chariot race with oil flasks and towels. It's surprisingly accurate. Another is whispering something to a younger man who blushes and drops his strigil twice. But this room is also practical. It's where the grime comes off, where the muscles get massaged, where your body begins to soften before the main event. The Caldarium. Roman doctors actually recommended this part of the process. The scraping the oil, the warmth it was believed to draw out impurities and balance the humors. Of course, Roman medicine also thought sneezing expelled evil spirits, so take that with a pinch of salt or fish sauce. By now, my skin is tingling. Every nerve feels awake. My muscles are loose. My pores wide open, and I smell vaguely like roasted herbs. I'm ready. So I thank the attendant quietly, because it's rude to talk too loud here, and make my way toward the heavy wooden door that leads to the caldarium. As I walk, I pass a wall niche, lined with little offerings. Tiny bronze figures, carved stones, even a wilted laurel crown. People leave these behind. Tiny prayers to health, to beauty, to not slipping and breaking their nose in the next room. And then I'm there. The door opens with a hiss, as if the room is exhaling. Steam pours out thick and slow, wrapping around me like a wet blanket. It clings to my face, soaks into my hair. I can't see much, just vague shapes glowing coals and shadows moving through the mist. The floor beneath my feet is warm, almost hot, and I shuffle carefully across it, squinting into the haze. Somewhere in the center is a small pool, barely knee-deep, its surface rippling from the heat rising below. The walls are tiled, darkened with age, and the ceiling arches overhead like a stone canopy, trapping every drop of heat inside. This is the caldarium, the hot room, and it is glorious, but also a little bit terrifying. The caldarium is like stepping into the lungs of a dragon. Every breath is thick with heat and moisture. The air doesn't so much move as pulse. It wraps around your chest, pushes down on your shoulders, makes you question all your life choices, and then gently invites you to sit down and suffer. I shuffle slowly across the mosaic floor, which radiates warmth like a sun-baked road. My feet protest, but I'm not about to look weak in front of the other bathers, especially not that guy over there, with the arms of a blacksmith and the legs of a panther. So, I grit my teeth, nod politely to the steam, and lower myself onto a heated stone bench. Now this is where the Romans really showed off. The caldarium wasn't just a hot room. It was a marvel of engineering. Hidden beneath the floor, a network of brick columns suspended it. Above a fire chamber, the hypocaust. Hot air from furnaces was funneled beneath and up through hollow walls, warming the room evenly from below and the sides. It's like sitting in a perfectly roasted pie. I start to sweat almost instantly. It pours from every pore like I'm leaking. My skin prickles, then glows, then practically hums. The oil from earlier mixes with the heat and forms a slick layer on my arms like a glaze. Everyone looks like a walking roast chicken. And then there's the pool. It's small, rectangular, and so hot it steams like soup. A few brave souls sit in it, faces flushed, eyes half closed, in bliss or heat stroke. It's hard to tell. One man dips a ladle and splashes water over his shoulders and lets out a sigh so content I feel like applauding. I decide to wait a few minutes before joining. You don't dive into boiling water. You negotiate with it. Around me, the conversations are quieter now. The heat forces a kind of reverence. People speak in murmurs, their words trailing off into the mist. Occasionally, there's a laugh, a cough, the gentle slap of water against tile. It's strangely intimate, like sharing a sauna with a room full of old friends you haven't met yet. The guy next to me is applying a clay mask to his arms. Not a spa treatment, more of a folk remedy. Good for the joints, he mutters. Not really to me. I nod wisely, even though I have no idea if that's true. Historians still debate whether these clay pastes had real medical benefits or were just tradition wrapped in superstition. Either way, the guy's elbows look fabulous. And let's talk hair. Heat does funny things to it. Some men wrap theirs in linen strips to keep it out of their eyes. Others wear wool caps soaked in cold water, supposedly to protect the brain from overheating. There's one gentleman in the corner with a full head of curls bouncing in the steam like a sponge cake. He's reading a wax tablet while fanning himself with a feather, and frankly, I aspire to that level of confidence. But there's also a risk here. Spend too long in the caldarium, and your body starts to rebel. Noses bleed, knees buckle, hair singes. There are records of bathers fainting, slipping, or in one tragic case, passing out and being mistaken for a statue. It didn't end well. That's why seasoned visitors know when to exit. I decide it's time to try the water. I inch forward, step by cautious step, until my toes meet the edge of the hot pool. I pause. Then I go for it. The water hits like a heated slap, shocking, painful, and then somehow perfect. I lower myself in, with the grace of a wounded deer, holding my breath until I'm submerged to the chest. The heat seeps into my bones, boiling away tension I didn't even know I had. I lean back, close my eyes, and let the room melt around me. This is what the Romans lived for. Not just the cleansing, but the transformation. You entered the Caldarium as a mortal man and emerged as something smoother, lighter, possibly shinier. A few minutes in, I open my eyes and notice something. The steam forms patterns on the ceiling. Vague shapes. Maybe a laurel wreath, maybe a dolphin, or maybe I'm just hallucinating from the heat. Either way, I feel oddly comforted. In a far corner, two old men are debating philosophy or cursing about taxes. Hard to say. One of them points at the ceiling and says something about Jupiter's belly. The other nods solemnly. Steam does strange things to conversation. And yes, there are rumors of what happens in the corners of the Caldarium. Whispers of secret meetings, forbidden romances, quiet betrayals, played out under the cover of mist. A certain senator was once caught passing notes here. Another supposedly met his assassin while soaking, though accounts differ. Some say the assassin never even made it out of the water. Eventually, I start to feel my fingers go a little numb. That's my cue. I rise slowly, very slowly, and make my way toward the exit. The cool air of the next room hits me like a splash of snowmelt. I gasp. My skin steams. I probably look like a lobster. But I'm not done yet, because while the Caldarium is the heart of the Roman bath, there are other rooms, waiting cooler, quieter, and occasionally scented with very questionable things. And if you think the heat was intense, wait until you smell what's coming next. I step out of the Caldarium like a boiled dumpling, skin flushed, hair damp, and legs moving about 3 seconds behind the rest of my body. The air in the corridor feels impossibly cool, though in truth it's still warmer than most summer days in Britain. Compared to the soup I just waded out of, though it might as well be winter. Ahead lies the Tepidarium, the warm room. It's a transition space, the Roman version of a cool-down lap. But tonight, I take a quick detour, drawn by something in the air. A smell. It's not unpleasant. It's not exactly pleasant either. It's strange, like sweetened charcoal, burnt flowers, wet limestone, and just the faintest suggestion of rotten fruit. The air practically tingles with it. I follow my nose and step into a smaller chamber, tucked just off the main corridor, a scenting room. Or depending on your taste, a failed experiment in olfactory warfare. Inside, braziers burn slowly in recessed alcoves, glowing red and exhaling curls of incense. Laurel leaves, myrrh, sage, even a handful of crushed rose petals smolder on copper trays. There's a bronze censer suspended from the ceiling, swinging lazily. The smoke rises in ribbons and clings to everything, including your lungs. One of the attendants waves a fan lazily, probably for show. He looks entirely too content to be breathing this soup of airborne flowers and charcoal. I nod to him, and he offers me a sprig of dried rosemary wrapped in a twist of linen. Sniff this, he says, if it gets too much. I do. It helps. Barely. See? Romans didn't just bathe their bodies, they tried to bathe the air itself. This room is a kind of olfactory theater, a scented prelude. They believed that good smells were a sign of good health, a symbol of culture, and also, let's be honest, a great way to hide the less charming scents of sweaty crowds. Historians still debate whether these scenting rooms served medicinal purposes or were just luxury for luxury's sake. Ancient texts mention them, but rarely agree on whether they healed the body or just confused it. On one wall is a niche filled with little clay cups, each holding a different mix. One smells like honey and thyme, another like vinegar and old socks. I sniffed them all anyway, because curiosity is a stronger force than self-preservation. There's even a small dish of something pungent and yellowish green. I ask the attendant what it is. He looks around conspiratorially and whispers, crocodile dung. I blink. What? Imported from Egypt. Apparently, it was sometimes burned for its supposedly purifying properties. Other times, it was mixed with resin and applied to the skin as sunscreen. I don't know whether to laugh, leave, or apply it directly to my forehead. I settle for raising my eyebrows and pretending this is totally normal behavior. Another patron walks in behind me, sniffs once, and immediately turns around. Sensible. But I linger. There's something weirdly fascinating about it, like standing in a closet full of ancient perfumes and half-baked potions, somewhere between wellness and witchcraft. And oddly enough, I start to feel calmer. The room forces you to breathe slowly, to focus, to think about your nose for maybe the first time all day. I take a seat on a warm stone bench, close my eyes, and let the scents wash over me. There's lavender now, and burnt citrus peel, and possibly wet hay. The combination is disorienting, hypnotic, and deeply Roman. Romans had a complex relationship with smells. They burned incense in homes' temples, even courtrooms. Some carried scented sachets under their tunics. Others bathed in rose water or massaged themselves with oil infused with cinnamon. Smell was status. Smell was identity. And of course, not all smells were welcome. The streets outside the baths were ripe. Open drains, market waist, sweaty tunics, worn one too many times. So the bathhouse became a haven, a place where even if the plumbing failed, the perfume might save the day. Eventually, the smoke starts to sting my eyes, and I take it as my cue to move on. I wave goodbye to the rosemary-slinging attendant and re-enter the corridor, nose slightly numb, but spirits lifted. As I head toward the tepidarium, I catch a glimpse of a fountain built into the wall. Water trickles lazily from the mouth of a marble lion. I splash some on my face. It's cool, not cold, just enough to remind me I'm still corporeal. The tepidarium is next. It's the gentlest of the rooms, a warm embrace after the intensity of the caldarium and the sensory chaos of the scent chamber. Inside, the lighting is dim and golden, flickering from recessed torches behind translucent panels. The floor is warm. The benches are wide, and the atmosphere is pure tranquility. Here, people rest. They sip wine. They breathe slowly. Some lie down and let the heat do its work. Others close their eyes and try not to fall asleep and snore like an ox. Looking at you guy in the corner. But for me, it's a pause, a moment to soak in the absurd beauty of all this. That in the middle of an empire built on conquest and concrete, someone thought to invent a scented relaxation room that may or may not involve crocodile poop. Only the Romans. I linger in the tepidarium, letting the warmth seep into my bones like honey through a sieve. It's the in-between room, not hot enough to roast, not cool enough to shiver. The perfect temperature to feel like a very important pudding slowly setting. Around me, the pace is slower. Everything feels cushioned, like sound itself is resting. No one's rushing. No one's debating. No one's performing shadowboxing routines. This room is for floating. Not in water, but in time. A man across from me is dozing, upright, chin on chest, breathing so softly he might be mistaken for a statue. Another is slowly massaging oil into his hands with the intensity of a philosopher solving a riddle. A third is using a delicate little spoon to eat what appears to be honeyed dates while staring into the middle distance. Honestly, I'd watch a whole play just about this room. But let me tell you something. This is a calm little paradise. It's also where the real action happens, just not the loud kind. This is where Roman politics gets slippery, literally and figuratively. In the corner, two men are leaning close together. One has the build of a retired soldier, the other the careful hair of someone who's definitely running for something. Their voices are low, but their hands are expressive. A few coins pass between them. A nod, a smile, maybe a deal, maybe a bribe, maybe both. Because here's the truth. The Roman baths weren't just a spa. They were social currency. If you were important or wanted to be, you came here. You networked. You gossiped. You floated business ideas between ladles of tepid water. You proposed laws after scraping grime from your armpits. Empire, but make it cozy. Senators, merchants, poets, even gladiators all passed through these steamy halls. Rumors were exchanged like towel tokens. Information was leaked as casually as sweat. Who was cheating on whom? Who owed money to the wrong family? Who got caught worshiping a banned deity? It all started here. Or ended here. Historians still debate whether official decisions were ever formally made in the baths, but unofficially, absolutely. Some of the Republic's most pivotal political moves were probably sealed, while two very shiny, half-naked men nodded solemnly over fig snacks. And oh, the gossip. There's a group nearby talking in hushed tones about a senator who fainted in the Caldarium and had to be dragged out like a rolled-up scroll. Another group chuckles about a merchant who claimed he was related to the emperor, only to be spotted selling fake ivory combs the next day. Even bathhouse staff weren't immune. There's a young towel attendant who's supposedly dating a noblewoman's daughter. They meet by the back fountain, or so the story goes. Every day, someone new claims they saw them holding hands near the sponge shelf. And betrayal. Let's just say the baths have seen more than one accidental injury. A misplaced elbow here, a slippery tile there. One famous general reportedly slipped in the frigidarium and claimed it was sabotage. He limped for the rest of his life, and three of his rivals vanished shortly after. Coincidence? Perhaps. But I'm not slipping anywhere near politics if I can help it. Not all interactions were devious, though. Sometimes friendships were forged here that lasted a lifetime. Bath buddies, if you will. Think of it as the Roman equivalent of bonding at a gym, except with more oil and fewer headphones. I shift slightly on my bench, stretching one leg, watching the lazy swirl of steam across the floor. Even the air seems to be listening, gathering secrets like a nosy ant. In one corner, a poet is reciting something soft and melodic to a few sleepy listeners. Probably a love poem, or a thinly veiled insult about someone's breath. It's hard to tell with poets. They were allowed to be a little vague. And let's not forget the bath philosophers. Always a few hanging around, ready to ponder life's meaning, with nothing but a sponge and a smirk. One leans over to me and says, "We are all but drops in the basin of time." I nod solemnly and reply, "Yes, but some of us are the soap scum." He laughs. I think. Hard to tell with philosophers. Eventually, someone walks by, carrying a tray of small clay cups, some kind of spiced wine. I take one gratefully. It's warm, rich, and tastes like grapes decided to punch you politely in the throat. Romans called it mulsum wine sweetened with honey and spiced with herbs, perfect for a bath. Less perfect for walking straight afterward. The warmth, the voices, the occasional waft of incense, it all starts to blur together. Not in a bad way. In a lull-you-to-sleep time is a blanket kind of way. I sip the wine, lean back, and feel myself loosen, like a scroll, unraveling in slow motion. But just when I think I might dissolve entirely into the tile, a bell rings somewhere in the distance. Soft metallic. A signal. Time to move. I place the empty cup on a shelf, stretch one last time, and head for the corridor leading to the next phase, snacks. Because even the most ambitious Roman politician couldn't plot revenge or declare love without first chewing something questionable on a skewer. You know the phrase, "don't swim on a full stomach"? The Romans never heard of it, or if they did, they politely ignored it, wrapped a fig in some prosciutto, and ate it while balancing on a wet marble bench. Because yes, you absolutely could eat at the baths. And honestly, if I'm being real, this was one of the best parts of the entire experience. As I step into the gustastio corner, a side alcove off the tepidarium, the scent hits me first. Sweet, salty, smoky. Somewhere between a barbecue, a farmer's market, and that one street food stand that always has a suspiciously long line. Steam curls up from clay pots. A vendor fans a brazier roasting small skewers of what might be fish or maybe lark. Hard to tell. Doesn't matter. I'm hungry. Romans love to eat while lounging. Bathhouses often had attached snack stalls, or even mini taverns where patrons could grab a bite between soaks. Imagine your gym installing a tapas bar next to the treadmill. Now, imagine that gym also had naked senators and a philosopher arguing with a cook over whether garlic had moral implications. I grab a skewer, fig cheese, and anchovy. It sounds horrifying, but somehow works. The salt and sweet hit my tongue like a poorly organized parade, but by the second bite, I'm sold. The fig is warm, the cheese is soft, and the anchovy, well, it's trying its best. Nearby, someone is munching on boiled eggs, dipped in garum, the fermented fish sauce Romans put on everything. And when I say everything, I mean everything. Salads, meats, desserts. Probably their hopes and dreams too. The smell is sharp, aggressive, and oddly comforting once you're used to it, like emotional vinegar. Another man offers me what looks like a small meatball wrapped in grape leaves. Boar, he says proudly. Caught it myself. He definitely didn't. He probably bought it from the same vendor who just dropped a tray of olives and cursed in 3 dialects. But I nod anyway. Delicious, I say, mouthful of something probably once hooved. And drinks. Oh, they've got options. There's watered wine mulsum again, and even a kind of barley drink that tastes like if bread got lonely and decided to ferment. I stick with the wine because I like to stay upright when walking near slippery stone. Here's the best part, though. The food isn't just fuel, it's a performance. Vendors chant their offerings like poets. Dates soaked in almond milk. Peacock's tongues, limited supply. A woman with an apron flings dried apricots into the air and catches them in her mouth to the applause of a small group of children. It's chaos, but gentle chaos. Like a food fight where everyone's already too sweaty to care. Historians still debate how common or elaborate bathhouse meals were. Some sources suggest snacks only, while others describe full-on feasts arranged in adjoining gardens or domed chambers. What's clear is that the baths weren't just for cleaning the body. They fed the soul, and the stomach, and occasionally the ego. A senator walks past with a garland of herbs around his neck and a mouthful of roasted chestnuts. He's trying to look serious, but a bit of honey is stuck in his beard. No one mentions it? That would be rude, and potentially dangerous depending on his voting record. I settle onto a curved bench, warm from the heat of 100 previous bathers, and savor my second fig cheese anchovy skewer. It's better than the first. Or I'm just fully Romanized at this point. One of the two. Beside me, a group of women laugh over a tray of candied nuts. Women's access to the baths was complicated. They weren't always allowed in at the same time as men. and sometimes had their own separate facilities. But here now, this crowd is mixed. The rules seem flexible. Or maybe someone bribed the right official. Either way, their laughter fills the room like music. In the corner, a child chases a pigeon. The pigeon appears to be winning. And just when I think the snack session is winding down, a boy runs in, holding a giant tray of libum, a type of sweet cheese bread made with bay leaves. He's clearly in over his head, nearly drops the whole thing, but recovers at the last second. Applause breaks out. Someone throws him a coin. Someone else throws a walnut. I'm not sure if it's a reward or a critique. I finish my wine, lick my fingers, and wipe them on a towel that smells faintly of rosewater and oregano. Somehow it works. The baths are full of these strange sensory collisions. Salty fish with sweet fruit. Heat followed by cold. Public nudity paired with political maneuvering. It's a system that shouldn't function, and yet it does gloriously. Eventually, I rise, stomach full, skin sticky head, pleasantly foggy. It's time to move again. The next room is where things sometimes get complicated, because after snacks, and after wine and after being surrounded by half-dressed, glistening citizens of all classes, things can shift. Baths weren't always calm. They could be loud, messy, even dangerous. And if you thought the anchovies were questionable, wait until you see what happens when the crowd gets too bold and the wine flows too freely. You can feel it in the air before it even starts. That slow, restless shift in the energy of the room. The post-snack lull, where everyone's a little too warm, a little too tipsy, and just a little too confident. The figs have been eaten, the wine has settled, and the polite conversations have started slipping into louder territory. I'm still leaning against a bench near the fountain, casually sipping the last of my mulsum, when the first shout cuts through the steam. It's not angry yet, just loud. A booming voice declaring something about chariot races. Probably who should have won the last one. There's a thud, a clatter, and then laughter. The kind of laughter that teeters right on the edge of tipping into chaos. And just like that, the bathhouse takes on a whole new tone. Let's talk about what happens when things get rowdy at the baths. You see, despite all the ritual and relaxation, the Roman bathhouse was still a very human space. And humans, when half-naked, oiled up, and given wine, can go from philosophical to feral in under 5 minutes. I glance over and spot the source of the commotion. 2 men, one tall and wiry, the other short and broad, are now gesturing wildly at each other. Their argument seems to involve a goat someone's sister and a rather bold claim about the emperor's hairstyle. No one moves to stop them. Yet, this kind of thing wasn't rare. In fact, ancient records suggest it happened often enough that most bathhouses employed guards. Not heavily armed soldiers, mind you, just enough muscle to separate people before someone tried to drown a political opponent in the cold plunge pool. One time, in the baths of Nero, a brawl broke out between 2 rival poets. Yes, poets. One had accused the other of plagiarizing an ode to garlic. The resulting fight ended with one man concussed by a ceramic oil flask and the other banned from public facilities for 3 months. Imagine being kicked out of the gym for bad rhyming. Historians still debate how common full-blown bathhouse riots were, but we know they happened. At least one major riot in Rome began with a heated game of dice in a bathhouse and ended with half the Caldarium on fire. That's not poetic exaggeration. That's Tuesday in the Empire. I ease away from the growing argument and head toward a quieter side alcove, only to discover a crowd gathered around an impromptu poetry recital. A man with an impressively waxed mustache stands on a towel-covered stool, reciting lines that appear to be romantic in nature, but involve an alarming number of vegetable metaphors. There's laughter, applause, and someone hurling a date at him in appreciation. Or maybe critique. Again, hard to tell. Hard to tell. Baths were public arenas for more than just gossip. They were places where performances happened. Challenges were issued, and flirtations bloomed. I've seen couples go from coy glances to hand-holding over a shared fig in 5 minutes flat. I've also seen someone loudly propose marriage and get promptly laughed out of the frigidarium. Nearby, a group of younger men are playing a game that involves balancing cups of wine on their knees while reciting Latin tongue twisters. One of them fails miserably and ends up doused in his own drink. He bows theatrically. Applause erupts. Someone throws him a towel. He uses it to bow again. And then inevitably, there's the guy who gets too into it. You know the type. Muscles for days. Voice like a thunderclap. Thinks every conversation is a competition, and every glance is a challenge. He's currently flexing near the steam vent, telling a story about how he once wrestled a bear. Not a metaphorical bear, an actual one, in Gaul, during a snowstorm, while holding a torch. People listen politely, though one older gentleman keeps muttering, "It was probably a goat." This is when the attendants start moving a little faster. You can tell they've seen this before. They gently steer groups apart, offer extra towels, start casually refilling water basins. All the signs that we're approaching what I like to call peak bathhouse, and yet through it all, there's a strange beauty, a vibrancy. This chaos is part of the ritual. The baths were a reflection of Roman life, messy, loud, unpredictable, but always communal, even when it bordered on absurd. One of the rowdy pair from earlier has now calmed down. They're sharing olives and talking about grain prices. I guess the goat comment was forgiven. Or maybe the wine just won. I take a deep breath, the air thick with scent and steam and the residual electricity of laughter. My skin is slick again, but not from bathing, from energy, from being in the thick of it all. And somehow, I'm not overwhelmed. I'm part of the rhythm now. There's something profoundly human about this stripping away armor, both literal and social, and just being. Being messy, being loud, being awkward, being real. Whether you're a senator, a stonemason, or a bathhouse philosopher quoting Plato with grapes in your mouth, you all share the same space. Eventually, a crier strolls through the hallway clapping his hands. He calls out something about closing time for the steam room and final entry to the frigidarium. The crowd groans, a few people cheer, and the poetry stool guy does a dramatic bow before vanishing into the mist. It's time to cool down, in every sense. The frigidarium awaits cold water, cold tiles, and the final cleanse. A place where even the rowdiest bather takes a quiet breath. Where the steam falls away. Where your body remembers it belongs to the world outside these walls. But not yet. First, I need one more skewer, maybe two. The shift from the chaos of the tepidarium and the snack court to the frigidarium feels almost spiritual. One moment, you're surrounded by noise, heat, and questionable decisions involving figs. The next, you're stepping into a chamber that feels like the inside of a marble cathedral, cooled by mountain breezes and disapproving ancestors. The frigidarium is large, echoey, and dramatically lit by high, narrow windows that cast long beams of pale light across the stone. There's a central pool, deep, silent, and impossibly still. Its surface looks like polished obsidian, and you can see faint tendrils of mist rising where warm bodies dare to enter. I pause at the edge. Every Roman knows this moment. You've just spent hours steaming, scraping, eating, gossiping, maybe even arguing about goat economics. And now, the final challenge, cold water. Really cold. Not brisk, not refreshing. Bone-clenching, gasp-inducing. Am I being punished by Neptune levels of cold? But you have to do it. It's the final seal on the ritual. The act that closes your pores, resets your senses, and reboots your soul. Or at least that's what the bathhouse philosophers say. I dip one toe in, regret. I step back, pretending I saw something interesting on the wall. There's a nice mosaic, two dolphins circling a trident. Very pretty, very distracting. I stall for time. A child cannonballs into the water nearby, comes up shrieking and grinning like he just survived battle. His father shakes his head in mild embarrassment, then plunges in after him without flinching. Show off. I can't stall forever. With the dignity of a man who has already eaten an anchovy fig skewer and listened to poetry about asparagus, I take a deep breath and step forward. The cold hits like a thunderclap. First the ankles, then the knees. Then I drop into the water with a controlled gasp submerging to the shoulders and immediately forget how to speak. My brain reboots. My skin tries to file a complaint. Every muscle contracts. My heartbeat sounds like someone's knocking on the inside of my ribs. And then, stillness, silence, clarity. It's like being inside a glass bell jar, floating in a moment that doesn't belong to time. The noise, the heat, the smells, all gone. There's just the water and the sound of your own breath. I close my eyes. It's not pleasant, not exactly. But it's clean, honest, and weirdly comforting. Like life has been stripped down to its simplest form. Other bathers drift through the pool. Some float with their arms stretched out. Others swim lazy laps. A few perch on the edge, feet dangling, eyes distant. It's a room where everyone goes inward. I drift to the steps and rest there, elbows on the marble, head tilted back. The ceiling is high and domed, painted with faded stars, and a few winged figures that might be deities or just very stylish birds. The air is sharp, crisp. For the first time today, I feel light. Empty in a good way. Roman doctors actually recommended cold plunges. They believed it firmed the flesh, invigorated the organs, and balanced the humors. Whether that's true or not, I can confirm it makes you feel extremely awake. Involuntarily awake. Like your soul just got pinched. Historians still debate whether the frigidarium was meant to symbolize something renewal, rebirth, penance. But even without a clear answer, the emotional effect is obvious. You emerge from that water feeling like you've passed a test. And in a culture obsessed with strength, resilience, and stoic coolness, pun fully intended, that mattered. I finally step out, water dripping in slow rivulets down my back, and grab a towel from a stack near the doorway. It's coarse, clean, and smells faintly of lye and sunlight. I wrap it around my shoulders and breathe. In the corner, two older men are playing dice on a carved stone ledge, muttering about who cheated last week. A young woman pats her hair dry with brisk, practiced movements while her friend wrings out her tunic with a twist that somehow looks like a dance. The room is quiet, not silent. There's no need to whisper, but everything is hushed, measured, respectful. Even the rowdy goat debaters from earlier are here now, sitting shoulder to shoulder, speaking softly like monks in a cold cathedral. This is the closing note, the fade to black. After all the sweating, oiling, scraping, gossiping, and snacking, the frigidarium is where you remember you're a body in the world. It's grounding and freezing, but mostly grounding. I take one last look around at the calm faces, the dripping hair, the echoing footsteps, and step back into the corridor. My skin tightens as it dries. My breath feels clearer. I can almost feel my heartbeat sinking with the steady drip of water from a distant pipe. I pass the scenting room again, less pungent now, mostly embers. The snack court has quieted just one vendor, packing up honeyed nuts and muttering to himself. The Palaestra lies empty, sweat stains drying in the afternoon light, and I realize we're nearing the end. There's just one part left, the final steps, the redressing, the return. But I'll take my time, because once you leave the baths, the real world comes crashing back. And honestly, after what I've just been through, I might need a nap first. I head back toward the apoditorium, the changing room, each step heavier than the last, but not with exhaustion. It's the kind of weight that only comes after complete relief, like the body finally realizing it doesn't need to hold itself so tightly anymore. The hum of the bathhouse has quieted, not silent, but mellow. A few stragglers move lazily through the stone halls, their conversations low and unhurried, as if even words are winding down for the day. The light outside has shifted too, slanting long and golden through the high windows. Time doesn't stop in the baths, but it definitely wobbles. I find my little cubby, where I left my satchel. To my surprise, everything is still there. My sandals, my spare tunic, my sad, slightly misshapen comb. The Capsarius, that's the attendant watching the valuables, nods at me without a word. I toss him a coin. It lands perfectly in his palm. We both pretend that was skill, not luck. Changing back into dry clothes is an art form here. You don't just slap your tunic on and stumble out. You move slowly, carefully. There's a rhythm to it, like the bathhouse wants you to carry some of its calm with you, not rush back into the dust and noise of the streets too soon. My skin is still warm from the caldarium, faintly tingly from the strigil, and fresh from the frigidarium chill. The linen tunic sticks a little at first because nothing ever slides on perfectly when you're damp, but eventually settles like a second skin. I tie the cord, adjust the hem, and catch my reflection in a polished bronze mirror mounted on the wall. And okay, I look good. Not marching in triumph through the forum good, but definitely I could impress someone at the bakery good. The kind of glow that only comes from spending 2 hours being steamed, scraped fed, and mildly yelled at by strangers. Nearby, a father is trying to wrangle 2 kids into their sandals. One keeps squirming, the other is eating a date she found in her towel. A few feet away, an older man is humming while threading a belt through his tunic, completely unbothered by the fact that his hair is sticking out like a sea urchin. It's the bathhouse effect. Vanity softens when you're that relaxed. I pack up my things, checking my sponge, like it's a family heirloom. It's not. But it survived the day, and in a bathhouse, that's no small feat. As I head toward the exit, I pass a mural painted across one wall. Faded, but still vivid. It shows Neptune rising from the sea. Trident raised waves curling around his feet. Next to him are bathers in various poses of glory, one wrestling, one diving, one lounging, like he's about to invent Instagram. Beneath it, a carved inscription reads, "Here the body is renewed, and the soul remembers it lives." It's a little dramatic, sure. But after today, I get it. Outside the bathhouse, the world continues. I can hear distant carts rumbling along the road, the soft bray of a mule, the cheerful argument of 2 market vendors who apparently disagree on the price of cucumbers. Civilization hums out there. But for now, I'm not in a hurry to join it. I sit on a bench near the bathhouse doors, letting the last drops of water dry on my arms. A breeze moves through the courtyard, just enough to lift the edge of my tunic and carry the scent of rosemary and clay into the air. A group of women passes by, laughing arms linked. Behind them, a young man adjusts his hair in a polished shield, muttering about whether he left his good sandals inside. A dog trots past with something unidentifiable in its mouth, and no one tries to stop it. And me, I lean back, close my eyes, and just exist. That's the secret of the Roman baths. They weren't just about getting clean. They were about feeling human, about being touched, without fear, seen without judgment, and reminded that your body, no matter how tired, wrinkled, hairy, or hilariously shaped, is something worth tending to. Even if 10 minutes from now, you'll step back into the dust and noise and forget what it felt like to be a creature of steam and oil and fig snacks. Even if tomorrow, you'll be back at the grindstone or in the Senate or carrying buckets for some cranky old patrician. Tonight, for these hours, you were something softer, something better, a body at peace, a mind at ease, a sponge-wielding champion of personal hygiene. I smile, and I promise myself I'll come back. I finally step back out into the street, the bathhouse at my back, the warm stone underfoot, and the smell of street dust and bread wafting in from a nearby stall. The world feels louder out here, brighter, too quick. Like someone pressed play on a scene I forgot I paused. It's a bit jarring at first. My body, still loose from hours of heat and scrubbing, moves slower than the crowd around me. I feel like I'm gliding while everyone else is stomping. People jostle past, merchants yell about olives and garum, and a child runs full speed chasing something that might have been a chicken or a pigeon, or based on the screech, it made a very upset god in disguise. The funny thing is, you notice everything more after the baths. The itch of your tunic collar, the sound of coins clinking together, the way the sun casts patterns through the fig tree branches. It's like your senses got tuned up inside, and now they're noticing things they used to ignore. I walk a little, not toward any place in particular, just letting my feet decide. There's no rush. I've got that post-bath glow, and frankly, I want people to see it. I pass a couple of acquaintances. One nods in approval. The other raises an eyebrow and says, "Long session." I nod, the universal Roman sign, for I was just scraped within an inch of my life and would now like to eat an unreasonable amount of cheese. And then, like clockwork, my stomach growls hard. Because, here's the secret, most bathers don't talk about. As relaxing as the baths are, they make you ravenous. You eat during, sure. But once you're out, your body realizes just how much it's been through and starts whispering about roasted lamb and flatbread, and maybe a side of lentils if you're feeling adventurous. I duck into a small taberna near the corner of the forum. It's not fancy. None of the stools match the oil lamp flickers like it's on its last breath, and the menu is basically scratched into a slab of wood, but the smell is amazing. Grilled leeks, smoked fish, something slightly burnt, but promising. The owner, a round woman with arms like amphoras, recognizes me. "Baths?" she asks. I nod. She disappears into the back and returns with a wooden plate stacked with cheese-stuffed pastries, warm olives, and a small dish of honey. I don't ask. I just eat. Every bite is bliss. My mouth feels more awake than my brain, which is already half asleep despite the cold plunge. Food after the baths tastes better. That's not a theory. That's science. Or maybe magic. Either way, it's real. Around me, other post-bathers do the same. One man eats with the speed of someone escaping a curse. Another just stares into his cup of wine like it told him a secret. There's a quiet understanding between us all. We've just returned from the underworld, or at least the very steamy, slightly scented version of it. While I chew, I listen. One table is whispering about a scandal. Apparently, someone's son was seen with someone else's wife near the oil basins. Another group is plotting a surprise party for a friend who just made full citizen status. And at the far end, a man in an oversized toga is composing a haiku about his lost sandal. It is frankly beautiful. I finish my meal, drain the last of my wine, and feel that perfect combination of full, clean, and useless. There's no way I'm doing anything productive tonight, which is fine. Romans didn't bathe to rev up, they bathed to wind down. I step back into the street and take the long way home. The city looks different after the baths. Softer, less aggressive. The columns of the temples aren't just tall, they're glowing in the sunset. The statues don't just stare, they look amused. The air, usually thick with voices, and movement feels breathable, like I've joined it instead of resisting it. It's not about being fancy, or elite, or even especially clean. It's about being reminded that you're allowed to take care of yourself, that sweating next to a stranger, arguing about figs, and then dunking yourself in icy water is a kind of ceremony, that there's meaning in the mundane and dignity in the details, that you weary citizen of a crumbling republic or rising empire or whatever today's Senate scandal suggests are worthy of this strange, lovely ritual. I pause before turning toward my apartment. The bathhouse is far behind me now, but the warmth lingers. And tomorrow, when the dust returns, when the crowds shout, when the amphora cracks, and the merchant cheats me out of 3 sestertii, I'll still carry this. Clean skin, quiet mind, full belly, sponge in bag, a small victory in the empire of noise. Back in my apartment, the first thing I do is slide the bolt into place behind the door with a satisfying clunk. Not for safety. Rome's not that kind of wild tonight, but for the signal it sends. Day over. Bath behind me. Nothing left but the slow drift toward sleep. The room is dim and small, lit by a single oil lamp, flickering lazily on the wall. A wooden chair leans near the bed, more for decoration than function, and a chipped basin in the corner still holds some water from this morning's face rinse. Funny how much effort went into that ritual, splashing cold water onto a tired face trying to feel clean. Then the baths just made it irrelevant. I sit for a moment, letting the silence settle around me. My body feels weightless, like someone turned down the gravity just a notch. Muscles I didn't even know I had have unclenched. My scalp feels smooth. My toes blissfully aired. I think even my spine sighed in relief when I finally lay down on the woven mat. And I realize there's no itch. There's always an itch. A spot you can't reach, a patch of skin reacting to sweat or wool or whatever plant your tunic brushed against earlier. But tonight, nothing. Just me wrapped in clean linen skin, tingling with memory. I reach for my satchel and pull out the sponge. Yes, the sponge again, because Romans were sentimental about their bath tools. It's not just a cleaning item, it's a souvenir, a badge of honor. If yours survived without being lost, stolen, or borrowed by a cousin, you kept it close. Sometimes even gave it a name. Mine Squillo. Don't ask. I set it down on the small table, like placing a relic on an altar. It deserves it. And then, as I ease myself onto the bed, something odd happens. My brain starts rewinding. The day not like a list of errands or a recounting of chores, but more like snapshots. Warm tile. The scrape of the strigil. The sting of cold water. The wild mix of rosemary sweat and roasted leeks. The way laughter echoed in the caldarium, like it was bouncing off clouds. One moment slides into the next. The scent of olive oil, the heat of the hypocaust floor, the child chasing the pigeon, the poet with the asparagus metaphors. It was all so absurd and ordinary and magnificent. That's the magic of it, I suppose. The way Rome could wrap its chaos in a towel and call it healing. And sure, tomorrow, the city will be back to its usual tricks. The forums will be loud, the temples crowded, the gossip sharp. Someone will probably throw a fish at a senator. Again. But tonight the empire feels small, manageable, warm. I glance at the window. The moon is just visible above the rooftops, fat and lazy, the same moon that steamed above the Caldarium earlier. Even she looked like she needed a bath, and I think maybe I'll write about this someday. Not in stone, not in ink, just in memory, a quiet scroll of the senses. For myself, a reminder that among the marble and madness there was steam, and oil, and quiet, and figs, and friends if only for an afternoon. It's late now. The kind of late where the city hushes itself. The clatter of carts fades. The vendors have stopped shouting, and even the pigeons seem to have curled into some rooftop crevice, finally silenced by nightfall and exhaustion. I lie in bed, with my arms folded under my head, staring at the ceiling. It's cracked in one corner. Faint lines, running like a map, drawn by a distracted god. I've looked at those lines 1,000 times, but tonight they seem softer, less like flaws, and more like the kind of imperfections that make things feel real. My body is still warm, that kind of slow heat that lives beneath the skin. Not sweaty, just settled, like I've been steeped in some herbal brew and left to dry gently in the sun. Every time I shift my skin, brushes linen and sends up a little hum of pleasure, and the smell's still there, faint and familiar. A mix of clean oil, faint incense, the ghost of lavender, maybe some mystery spice from that snack I forgot to ask about. It clings, but gently, like memory. There's something about the baths that sticks with you. Not just the physical, though yes, your skin is softer than it's been in months, but emotionally, mentally. It's like the steam did more than unclog pores. It unclogged thoughts. I find myself remembering things I hadn't thought about in ages. A friend I haven't seen since Saturnalia, who always brought me the wrong wine and called it a gift. A song my mother used to hum when folding laundry. A moment last summer when I laughed so hard in the Palaestra, I actually slipped on my own sweat and knocked over a senator. He wasn't mad. He applauded. There's something about floating in hot water, sitting shoulder to shoulder with strangers that presses reset on your heart. That says, yes, the empire may be crumbling, and yes, your landlord still hasn't fixed the stair rail. But for now, breathe. Historians often focus on the military, the politics, the architecture. But I'm convinced the true secret to Rome's greatness is the bathhouse. Where else can a baker, a soldier, and a bored teenager sit side by side, all half naked, and talk about figs, love, and sewer repairs without irony? It's the great equalizer. Not that all baths were created equal. Let's be honest, some were fancier. The wealthy had their private ones, their marble-lined halls and imported oils. But the public ones, that's where the soul of the city lived. You could tell everything about a neighborhood by its bathhouse. The tile pattern told you who funded it. The size of the benches told you how crowded it got. The smell of the oil told you who brought their own and who bought cheap from the vendor near the gymnasium. And the people. You learned more about someone in 5 minutes of shared sweat than you could in a year of formal dinners. Posture, conversation, towel folding technique, it all spoke volumes. There was a man today sitting quietly by the edge of the frigidarium. I noticed him only briefly. He didn't say much, didn't eat, didn't argue, didn't join the games. But when he looked up at the dome, there was a smile, a private one, like whatever weight he'd brought in had been lifted, even for a moment. That's the power of it. Not transformation, not enlightenment, just permission. Permission to rest. to be seen without judgment, to exist in your body, imperfect and aging and glorious, and have that be enough. I roll onto my side. The blanket shifts. My fingers brush the edge of the satchel still sitting on the table. I'll unpack it in the morning. Maybe rinse the sponge. Maybe not. Let it hold the scent a little longer. Outside, I hear footsteps. Light, deliberate. Someone returning home from their own long evening. Maybe they bathe too. Maybe not. But the rhythm is slow, and that's what matters. And above me, that cracked ceiling. Still there. Still tracing lazy constellations I haven't named yet. Maybe tomorrow I will. Maybe tomorrow I'll return to the baths. Or maybe I'll just carry them with me on my skin, in my breath, in the way I'll look at people a little more gently, the way I'll soften before I speak, the way I'll remember that sometimes all it takes to feel human again is warm water, a sharp blade of fig, and a stranger who offers you a towel. Sleep is calling, the kind that comes not from exhaustion, but from peace. And tonight, I'll let it take me. The window is cracked just enough to let in a hint of the night breeze. It carries with it the scent of baked earth, the faintest echo of laughter from a courtyard 2 buildings away, and the distant clop of hooves as a cart makes its way down the cobblestones toward the Tiber. I lie still, the blanket barely rising with my breath, the city slowly dimming around me. This is the part no one writes about, the part after. Not the marble columns, or the mosaic floors, or the heroic splashes into the frigidarium. Just this, the silence that settles into your bones, the gentle pulsing in your calves, where the hot stones ease the week away, the ghost of oil still clinging to your shoulders, whispering that maybe, just maybe, you've done enough for one day. Even the sponge seems quieter now. I swear it's looking at me from the table like a tiny squishy sentinel. Proud, a little judgmental, definitely tired. Same, buddy. And I think about how all of this entire bathhouse ritual, wasn't some luxury carved out for emperors alone. It was for everyone. For the baker with flour under his nails. For the widow with sore knees. For the soldier with too many scars. For the merchant, the tailor, the poet, and yes, even the guy who got hit in the head with a date during the asparagus poem. The baths were the heartbeat of Rome. Not just pipes and pools and politics, but proof that someone somewhere understood that to keep people going, you have to give them a place to stop, a place to steam out the bad thoughts, to scrub off the sharp words, to eat ridiculous snacks and sit in silence beside someone you'll never see again, but who somehow knows exactly how you feel just by the way they sigh. There's something sacred about that. And not in the temple kind of way, in the human kind of way. As I shift to find a cooler spot on the pillow, I smile. Just a little. Because I know that even if the city forgets this part, if the poets get distracted by wars and lovers and wine-slick tragedies, someone will remember. Some future soul will run their fingers across a faded inscription, will stand in the ruins of a half-buried caldarium and wonder what it felt like. And maybe they'll close their eyes, take a breath, and hear it. The scrape of a strigil, the hush of a whisper, the soft slap of wet sandals on warm stone. They'll know the baths were never about water. They were about remembering that we are all of us just trying to come clean. And now, with the final whisper of breeze, tugging gently at the window curtain, I let myself drift. Not fall, not drop, just drift, like steam curling from a copper bowl, like oil spreading across skin, like a thought too soft to hold floating just beneath the surface of sleep. And now, the night has folded itself around me. There's no more heat, no more splashing, no flicker of torchlight or echo of sandals. Just stillness. Just breath. The kind of stillness you don't notice until the noise has melted completely away. My body is feather light now. Every limb settled. every muscle slack. Even my mind feels slower, like it's been carefully rinsed and left to dry on a warm windowsill. There's no urgency, no need to chase anything, not even thought. Out there beyond the shutters, Rome keeps breathing, quietly, streets cooling, dogs curling beneath stone benches, the moon hanging low like a lantern forgotten by the gods. But in here, I'm wrapped in a cocoon of rest. Everything I needed to do is done. Everything I didn't. It can wait. I've done my part for the day. I showed up. I scraped off the week. I fed the body and let the mind go soft. And now I let go. The baths, the bustle, the scent of oil and honey, they're all drifting further away. Not lost, just distant, like a warm dream already half forgotten, but still lingering somewhere behind the ribs. Sleep is here. It doesn't knock. It just arrives, gentle, patient, complete. So wherever you are, whoever you are, let yourself go soft now. You've earned it. Let the warmth of this world hold you. Let the weight of your day dissolve into the quiet. Let yourself float. I'll be right here, just breathing. Good night.